CSS, as the name implies, simply means cascading style sheet, and it is used to structure the word look the way the content on a web page looks. Beauty of a web page can be attributed to CSS, right? So let's get into it. So CSS basically, like I said earlier, it stands for cascading style sheet, and then it is used to describe how elements are to be displayed on a screen, paper, or in other media. CSS saves a lot of work. It can control the layout of multiple pages all at once. Yeah, that's how it saves a lot of work. When you import a particular style sheet across multiple pages, it saves you the energy of writing the styles on each of those pages. Right. A CSS rule consists of a selector and a declaration block. And as you can see, this is just the syntax of a CSS. We have the selector, we have the declaration block. Now the selector is the HTML element you're trying to style. You can then the declaration block consists of the property and the value. So this property and value are wrapped up in a curly braces, right? If you have multiple style to add to an element, you have to differentiate them using a semicolon. And that's why you're seeing a semicolon at the back of the blue and that of the font size. So this is how CSS styles are written. The selection point to the HTML element you want to style, that's the H1. The declaration block contains one or more declarations separated by semicolon. Each declaration includes a CSS property name and a value separated by a colon. Multiple CSS declarations are separated with semicolons, right? And declaration blocks are surrounded by curly braces. Just like I said earlier, these are just formalities from W3 schools. Now, basically, what we're going to be talking about, discussing and learning how to utilize them is knowing all different forms of CSS selectors and how we can style different elements considering some basic CSS properties and values. That's basically what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So if you follow me, you understand that CSS selectors are categorized into five. Basically, selectors in CSS are just how you can select or find an element that you want to style. Now, the process of selecting this element is categorized into five. We have the simple selector, which is basically what we have in this our former slide. We have H1. This is a simple selector because basically what we're doing is that we are calling the element by its name and then we are giving it a style. So it's simple. You just select the element based on its name, its ID or class. Then we have the combinator selector. Select the element based on a specific relationship between them. You can have this is a way of like if you have multiple CSS element that you want to group and give a specific style, you can group multiple CSS elements and then style them together, right? Then we have pseudo class selectors, which I'll be showing us in minutes. We have pseudo element selectors. You understand? Pseudo class selectors are basically selecting elements based on their state. Pseudo elements selectors select and style a part of an element, right? Remember the difference. Pseudo class selects element based on a certain state, while the pseudo element selects and style a part of an element. We have the attribute selectors that helps us to select an element based on its attribute, right? Then a very important part that I want us to really grab, the basic part of it is this CSS box model because it's going to play a very important role in our styling when we want to apply spaces, padding, and all that. You really need to understand how a box model works. Basically, in CSS, everything is considered a box. You understand? So you need to know how you move around those boxes, the spaces between and inside these boxes, so that you get your preferred alignment and positioning. Now let's do it from what is on our slide. Everything in CSS has a box around it. And understanding these boxes is key to being able to create more complex layouts with CSS or to align items with other items. The box model consists of four items: the margin, the border, the padding, the content. Let's take a look at a graphical illustration of how this looks like. This is a border. This is a box model. We have the margin, we have the border, we have the padding, we have the content. A CSS margin is the space outside an element. I will also show us how these things work in the code. The CSS border is the uh, line indication at the edge of this box. As when you have a box on a page, you have an edge indication color around the edge of this box. This is the border of this box. Regardless of whether it has a color or not, every box has a border, which is the edges of this box. So CSS has a particular space allocated to this border of every box on a web page. Remember, CSS sees or considers every element as a box. Okay. Then inside this box, we have inner space, which houses our content. And even after our content, there's a space around that our content. That space within the content area is called the padding. And then the space within where the content resides itself is there. Content, right? So the content box is where the text or images appear. The padding clears an area around the content. The padding is transparent. A border that goes around the padding and the content. Remember, a border goes around the padding and the content. And this is our border. It is our border is wrapping our padding and content. Then we'll have the margin. The margin clears an area outside the border. The margin is also transparent, right? Now, basic styling, basic styling in CSS. So we're going to be moving to the code area, and we're going to be looking at typographic styling, basic spacing and alignments, which has to do with margin, padding, border, width, height, and all that. Then we're going to be talking about background colors and colors. Okay, so without any further ado, let's just jump right into the code. All right, so guys, Initially, when we discussed HTML, we happened to build this simple mental health website, and the essence is to help us understand structuring a web page in a semantic manner, kind of. So, and just knowing how websites can be grouped into sections, which is basically what we did here. And if we look at our code, we'll see we have a header section in this code block. We have a main section. We have a footer section. And the footer section is down here, 2023 Mental Health Awareness. Then inside our main section, we have sections, different sections. We have about 3 sections in this website. So today, using what we're going to be learning in our CSS, we're going to be adding a touch of style to this website. All right. So let's get down to business. Just want to be sure everything works fine. Paste this here. All right. Okay. So let's move ahead. So we're going to be starting with basic CSS selectors, and we're going to be seeing the effect of them. So the first in line that we're going to be talking about is the simple CSS selector. Right, so I'm going to create a new style sheet because this is more like my template. I'm going to create a new CSS file here, call it text.css. And then I'm going to import this in our index.html. We already have the first text imported. So I want to have so basically we don't have any style inside this element. Okay, I think we have some, but I commented it out. All right, so that everything we do can be in sync, we're going to be interchanging between these two files. So this is more like my guide while we proceed to our learning. So when we talk about CSS simple selector, it's simply selecting an element based on its name, ID, or class. And when we look at our header here, we have what we call some element nested inside of it. We have the nav element, which is holding our navigation links. We have the title of the website. Now let's see. Remember, like I said, the simple selector means you can pick the element by its name, its ID, or class. So let's pick header here, and let's give header a class. Let's give our header a padding of 10 pixels. And then let's give it a color. Let's leave color anyways. Um, Padding of 10 pixels, and then let's give it a margin of 10 pixels. Now, if we do border, I'm just going to use this to explain what the difference between padding, margin, and border, more like the box model in CSS. So we will understand. We have border style. Let's use solid. and then there is border color. Let me leave color for now. As you can see, if you go to this page, you will see that. Let me remove this first. This is our mental health header. Are you seeing the space is occupying? Between this mental health awareness down to our navigation is the content part. Remember when we talked about our CSS box model, we have the part, which is the content part, which is the space where the content lives. But then we have the outside space. The outside space is the margin, and it is like it was said, it is transparent and it's always above the border. Then we have the padding. The padding is after the border, and the padding is the space between the content, the space wrapping the content, right? And if you can see our padding up here, we have a space up here, we have a space down here, right? So um this is explaining the space in the padding for us. But then this border, this header, I mean to say, have its own spacing it came with. But then let's see how we can add additional spacings to it so we will be able to understand and differentiate the padding and the margin. Now, if I comment out this one, let's see, let me say padding. Remember, this mental health was at the edge before, but immediately I added padding, it came closer. Let me remove it so we can see. As you can see, it has moved down to the edge again. Well, let me use padding 50 pixels so it can be very obvious. As you can see, the space around the content has increased. This is because we just increase the space that is wrapping the content, which is padding. And then we have margin, which is the space outside the margin, outside after the border. I added border 10 pixels, and as you can see, there is already a space just after the border, top by the corner, the left, right, and top and bottom. Now let me increase the value to 50 pixels so that you will understand that it affects. So as you can see now, there is a as you can see now there is a big space top, left, right, bottom, just after the border. That is to explain to us that margin is a space, the invisible space, just right above the border of the element. And then padding is just the space wrapping the content of the box. Then, mind you, this border is just to demarcate the line between padding and the margin, but it also has its own spacing too, and it can be increased. And if we want to increase it, we can say border width 5 pixels. As you can see, it has increased, right? So this will automatically make the space in this web page that this header, let me give this header a background color so we can differentiate it. The background color of what am I going to use? Let me use purple. As you can see, the header content of this website now has a lot of space it's consuming. So in order to consider the space this header is consuming, we are not just looking at the space where the content lives, we should also consider the space outside the content after the border, even the space the border itself is consuming, because the bigger the width or the tinier the width the border is, it also occupying space, right? So having said that, let's also give a color property. to our navigation. As you can see, we now have white text. Right. Now, all these things I've explained here, the padding is the property. The 50 pixels is the value. The margin is the property. The 50 pixels is the value, so on and so forth. Same goes to all of them. So the property is this actual style you are trying to give to that element, while the value is the unit or the like what will I say this is okay is the like the definition of what the style should assume, right? So that's basically it. Now we've talked about selectors. Now let's talk about combinator selectors. Combinator selectors is we've styled our header. Let's go back to our HTML. We have we have sections here. We have sections in this website. And I'm going to be giving these our sections a class called section. I'm going to be giving an ID called section 1, this one an ID section 2, and this one an ID section 3, right? And also remember that an ID is always unique, should be unique, you understand? Even if it doesn't do a fatal error, but the browser will still tell you that you have a duplicate IDs when you try to put ID of this. Assuming I have section 1 here, it's not a good thing. It is required that IDs are unique so that they are uniquely identified either when you are trying to style an element or when you're trying to fetch that element using JavaScript. Right. So back to our class. The reason why I chose to give it this things class sections because class is basically according to conventions that are popularly used in this space, in this development industry, is that sections is used to, sorry, class is used to give styles that you want to reuse across different elements. So if I define a style called section, what that means is that this section, anywhere any element that has the class section will automatically inherit the style block of this section. And let's assume I decided to say to give um, a width and margin to my um, okay, let's just make everything to align with the same 50 pixels margin. Now if you look at our website, everything is now 50 pixels. And the reason why it is taking the 50 pixels is because we define the class section across all. So anywhere we call section, automatically that element will inherit 50% pixels. Now let you remember this section is not applicable to our footer, so that is why our footer is still geared towards the left and is almost close to the edge. Now let's just come here and give our footer a class called section. As you can see, the margin is now applied to our footer and our footer is in the same line with all our sections, right? So that's that. But I don't want the footer to have section class, right? So I believe we are understanding something right now. Anyway, so having said that, I have an image on this my web page. Let me view it in the browser. And these images are here, but I want these images to take a different shape. I want these images to really, I just want to style these images. But these images are in groups, they're in different sections, they are not together. We have image in section 1, we have image in section 2, and we have image in section 3. Right, so this is section 2, section 3. Okay, let me use images slash resilience here. But you can see we have a very big image. Now, by default, I give all our images a width and height of 300 and height of 150 using the HTML attributes. But I want to do that with CSS. So I am going to write an img. I only want to select images that are inside our section elements, and then I want to give it a width of 300 pixels and a height of 150 pixels. So as you can see, everything, all of them are now having the same size. Then there's something else I want to do. I want to give a border to this my image, border style. Okay, let's say solid. But I want the color of the border to be purple. So border color. And I want to increase the width of the border. You must have guessed its border width, and then we have, let's use 3 pixels. Let me use 5 pixels. So that it will be very bold. Then I want to give it a border radius. I want to curve the edge of this border on those images. Border radius of 7 pixels. Alright, so as you can see, our website is taking shape to some extent. Now, nice. I want to display something for us, the combinator selector. Now, assuming you have um, multiple elements that you want to give a peculiar style, let's assume if we come to this let's go to our section 1. In our section 1, say what is mental health, and then there's an image. Let's just give a demarcation line, and then let's create a div. And let me say, let me call this h3 outline. Let me duplicate this. Now we have outline, we have type. rules, and let's say we have guideline. And then we have all this out. Let's give this an ID out. Let's give this an ID rule. Then let's give this an ID guide. Now, I want these three elements to have, as you can see, we have outline, rules, and guidelines. I want these three elements to be styled together, but they are looking the same. They are the same H3, but they are not the same. If I decide to do H3 now and say color, color property is used to style a text, to give the color to a text. So it's only applied to text, and I want to give them a color of red. What this means is that every H3 that is on my website is going to have a color red, and unfortunately, I don't have any other H3, right? So, but assuming we have what we call an ID called rule, and we have H3 inside this rule, that this ID is the div container, but we are targeting the H3 inside. As you can see, it's only the rule now that has the color red. We can as well come here and then look for guide, and then the H3 inside guide. As you can see, it also has the color red. I can even go ahead and put the last one, which is what did you give the ID out? Right. So let's come here and say out, and then we want to style the H3 out. As you can see now, all the H3 now, because they are together, they are grouped, they are having a color red. Let me differentiate this a bit. Assuming we have a paragraph, Lauren, and this one too, have a paragraph, Lauren, and the same here, paragraph, Lauren, and you will see that it's only the H3 that is taking the style color red, because we grouped it. We want them to just have unit. So this is combinator selector in CSS. Combinator selector example. We have these ones are simple selections. Simple selector. Same as this. Simple selector. Then this one is called direct child. We'll come to that. Anyways, we'll come to that. All right. So, excuse me. So, we have this. If I decide to remove the H3 in this, what it means is that the entire outline div is going to have a color red. But this is not what we want. I just hope you understand what I mean here. But in order for our website to look nice, let's also give it a heading color called purple. Let's change this to okay. We'll come back to this. Now we have talked about combinator selector based on specific relationship between elements, right? We can group them, you understand? We can um, you can group elements with different style and then we can just put out call their class or their ID, style them by their ID, right? And if you look at my selector here, I have the IDs selected in CSS using the pound sign and then the element that is a direct child of it. I will still come back to this and explain what's going on here according to here. And that is exactly what we're going into next. We'll have what we call descendant selector. Now, descendant selector is when you have an element that is a parent element, but you want the child inside that element to have um, a specific styling. That is when you now declare the parent element, then you give a space and you call the child element. Automatically, CSS will go and pick that element. So just go under the parent element and look for that element you're trying to style. And if you have multiple child elements, it is going to group them just like the way we did here. All our images are under sections. So it selected every single section tag on our HTML and picked their child images and gave it a border of purple. That is what is going on here. Same goes to this. The rule is the parent tag, which is an ID we gave here, the rule here. But it has a child element called H3. And same goes for all of them. What we did here to group them is we selected all the IDs and then their children elements because it's their children element we want them to have the same unique style and then we gave it a color of purple. I believe that made sense. Right, so since we are still in the spirit of selectors, let's also talk about the child selector. Right, so let's talk about the child selector. Let me go over to our header because it will make more sense if we do this in the header. If you look at the header, if you look at the header, we have a lot of nested elements. We have the H1, we have the nav, and then we have the unordered list with its children list items. Now, when you see when you see stuffs like this, and then you want to style a child element, let's see. Child elements are indicated by the greater than symbol. Now let's use our header as the parent element and then we want to select a child, direct child. Okay, we want to do a child selector. Let's say header. Let's look at the HTML structure. I always like looking at my structure first before doing anything. Let me give a H1 tag here. You are not going crazy. And let's have another one. All in your mind. Your mind is trying to trick you. Then let's have something here. H1 again. Let's say test. Right, so we want to select the child element of this header. And then we want to select the child H1. I want to give it a color of green. Let's use this one, it's very bright. And what are you seeing here? Every H1 we have, from the one top, mental health, to the one here, we are getting all of them starred in a lemon color. And that is because we use the child selector. What the child selector does is picks the children of a parent element, the direct children, the direct children. Because if you notice, our text is also a H1, but it wasn't styled with that color. The reason is because it is not the child, direct child element of the header element. Rather, it is a direct child of the nav element, right? So because it's nested inside the nav, it's not a direct child. The nav is also a direct child of the header, but we are not styling the nav, we are specifically targeting the H1. So that is why this H1 was not targeted. So this example is just to illustrate how the child element, the child selector works. But this is just for example's sake, I'm going to take this out and I'm going to make this one a H4, 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 H4. Right, so this is it. And then our mental health website. Instead of a direct chart, okay, let's leave this way. The next is the adjacent sibling selector. The adjacent sibling selector. The adjacent sibling selector is denoted by the plus symbol, and we'll be taking a look at it and see how it works. Let's take a look at our HTML and see what we can make do of. Okay, let's go with the section tag. Let's go with the section tag. What are we picking in the section? What are we picking? What are we picking? Let's pick the H2. Yeah, let's see if we can pick the H2. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry, just was a little bit distracted. Alright, so okay, let's use the H2. And then section plus H2 color red. And nothing happened. Really, nothing happened. Why did something not happen? I think I might know why. The adjacent sibling selector is used to select an element that is directly after another specific element. sibling elements must have the same parent element. And adjacent means immediately following. What this basically means is that I'm trying to get the online definition of this so that we can all be in the same sync. So imagine if we have uh, a section and we have H2. How are we going to style it? What it means is that, okay, I don't know how to explain this, but let's just do it practical so we can understand. Um, okay, now this is what I mean here. The paragraph tag we put here. Alright, so when you're using the plus sign, basically I don't use this. And most people don't use it often, or maybe probably have not written a very complex CSS file. I have, but I didn't really make use of this. But like in CSS, there are many ways you can achieve quite a lot of things, and depending on your style. But what this does is that paragraph is the element directly after the main element you're tagging it with. The reason why when I did the first one it wasn't applying it was because it is not adjacent to the section element. Now if you look at the HTML, we have the section element, right? And we have the paragraph tag. We have two paragraph tag. I have to even add this. We have two paragraph tag. But one might think, oh, we are trying to style the paragraph that is inside the section. No. What is going to happen is that the CSS is going to look for any paragraph tag that is directly after the section. So if there is no paragraph directly after the section, it won't style it. But if by any means CSS happen to encounter any paragraph tag immediately after a section tag, it's going to style it with the color red. Right? So as you can see, I just added this paragraph, it styled it for me. You understand? So it's just used for element adjacent to another element. So please take note. In our HTML, we have our sections. The plus style is used to pick an element immediately after an element. So it doesn't pick what is inside the element, if it's a parent element or not. It just picks what is just in line, adjacently following it up immediately. So that's what this plus sign does. We call it adjacent sibling selector. Let me copy this, paste it here, and turn it child selector. direct title. Then let's move over to general sibling selector. The general sibling selector, hold on guys. Alright. The general sibling selector is more like the adjacent selector, but not exactly. What the general sibling selector does is that it selects elements that are next to a sibling element, just like what we have in adjacent selector, right? So if we have a div with a paragraph, let's demonstrate this. I'm going to remove this. I'm also going to remove some things here. I'm also going to remove this. Now, assuming we have a div, have a paragraph, have a paragraph tag, have Lauren, we don't like pen to Lauren, so Lauren pen. And then we have another paragraph here. We have Lauren pen, right? And then we want to style this. Remember, this is section 3. Let's apply some bit of styling here. Now let's use, oh, sorry. Let me copy this. Let's use the ID selector section 3. And the direct sibling selector is your, now with this symbol, let's take a look at our section 3 and see what goes on there. These are section 3. Okay. This is the two stuff that we added. Right. So now this um, let's give this an ID called sibling. And then let's come here and let's say sibling. Now, this direct sibling selector is used to select any element that is a direct sibling of another element. Like what that means is like it's going to pick all element that is a direct sibling of the element that is specified. Now this sibling now is the div tag we have here called sibling, right? Now we are saying every direct sibling, every direct what's it called, sibling, brother or sister to this div tag that is a paragraph, style it to red. And if you look at what we have here, this paragraph is a direct sibling. It's just immediately after, just like the same way we have our adjacent. But the difference between these two is that they look more alike. Let me do this outside this so that we will understand better. Let's say we have another paragraph here, another paragraph here. If we go, so long as this becomes, so long as all these p tag are immediately after this sibling div, it is always going to style them to red, right? But if it is the direct sibling, the adjacent sibling selector, let's add our p here and see what we're gonna get. Our plus sign, I mean to say. Let's see what we're gonna get. You see, the only one that took the style red is the one that is directly immediately after the div tag. See, immediately after the div tag, only this first one that took the styling and the adjacent sibling selector. But the general sibling selector selects everything that is a p tag. Let me do this, Control Z. Everything that is a p tag that is immediately after the div with the ID sibling. I believe that makes sense, right? So we have the attribute selector. Now, I mentioned in our last class that we HTML have different attributes. There are different attributes you can um, add to an element, right? We have the title attribute. Different elements have some unique attribute that is peculiar to them. I'm going to remove two of these. Let me just remove one, and I'm going to, okay, we call this one general sibling selector. We have the attribute selector. That's what we're going to be talking about, the attribute selector. Now, every HTML element can have a title attribute. The ID is also an attribute, so you can pick an ID, but let's give this one a title called the last paragraph or last child. If I come here and I do something like this, do something like this, P title equals to last child. I can say I'm going to move this p tag up from here because our direct sibling selector, this style here, this one here is affecting it. So I'm going to go move it up to, okay, don't worry. There's no point moving it up. Let me just leave it here. No, I won't leave it here. We want to use another tag. So we'll call this our title description 1 and description 2. Now let's come here and say the element is h4, Abby, but we want to select it by its title name. Now we have h4. We have description 1. Let's go up to where that is. I think description 1 is you're not crazy, and then let's give it a color red. You can see we've used this pattern to start just this H4 element because of the attributes tied to attributes. So using this same method, you can style any element with its attributes, right? So long as the attribute is not a class and it's not an ID, you just style the attribute by the name. So um, I believe that's very clear. So let me just copy this instead of typing it out, and then I'm gonna paste it here. Attribute selector. But I don't want this to be red. I don't want this to be red. But I believe you get the gist. When the time comes, we'll be able to, I'm styling this website as we go over all the things we have here. Now, we have the pseudo selector. The pseudo selector and the pseudo class selector and the pseudo element selector. We're going to be looking over these two. They are quite powerful. We're going to be looking over these two so we can understand how they work. Let's do pseudo class selector first. Here's my pseudo class selector. Styling an element based on a specific state. Alright, I think this is okay. Now, I'm going to style our links that are inside our um, header, and I want to give it a list style none. Okay, sorry. I'm styling this list style is for a list, styling a list, and I'm applying it on a link. It won't work. So let me say our color is white. Let's give all our link color white. As you can see, our links are now color white. And then let's see text decoration none. Text decoration is the underline that you are seeing there. If we use dashed, you will see it dashed. It depends on what you use. If you use a different decorations, but I just want to make it none so that you won't have any link attached to that. Or let me leave this part though. Later we'll come to that. So now this is our link, right? But when it comes to pseudo class selector, there are different things you can do to a pseudo class with a pseudo class. The syntax with pseudo class is the selector can be any HTML or class or ID, any selector at all. The selector then the dash that the double colon and then the class, the pseudo class you want to apply. Now for us here, we have pseudo class and then you apply your styling. This is the syntax. Let me just comment this out. And property and value. This is the syntax. Let me call this selector. Okay, so this is the syntax, right? This is supposed to go up. I don't need this here. No. Okay. So now let's do our pseudo class selector. Mm, lemon yellow. Is it lemon green? Okay. Let's use this light green. If come over here and I refresh and over, let's go to the website. Okay, it's not working, and I know because maybe we didn't. Alright. Now, the syntax of a CSS selector. Before now, CSS studio selector, before now, it was double column. But because CSS is evolving, they've changed it. I think the reason for separating the double column with a single column is to differentiate pseudo class with pseudo element. So right now our styles are applying. If we hover on these links, we are now seeing our lemon green being highlighted. Right. We can even remove the underline when someone hover on it. Let's remove the underline by default. And then let's add it when someone hover on it. So if I come here and over, as you can see, the underline is there, but by default it's not. So these are examples of pseudo class. You understand? There's quite a number of things we can do. You know, when you go to a Google and you search for something and they provide you with list of links, when you click on it, if you come back to that same search on Google, you find out that the text, the link color have changed to purple. There is also a property for that using CSS, and we can call it visited. And research on all these pseudo classes and how to use them. Now we want to give, whenever a link is clicked, we want to tell our page that this link, or the user visiting this page, that this link has been clicked before now. So if I decide to click on this home button, this might not really take effect because we didn't move away from here. Okay, this is challenges. Let's go back. Let's refresh. Okay, isn't showing. So I think this works with an actual image. Okay, let's go to our HTML and put this link. Let's put another link here. Let's call it google.com. Let's channel this link to Google. Alright, so if we come here and we click on Google, okay, it's not seeing it as a link. That means I have to put HTTPS. Alright, so let's go back and let's refresh. If I click on this, okay, the first one actually worked. It wasn't showing on this page, but it was definitely showing on our browser. So because we clicked on this link, the color has changed to red. Because we've not clicked on this one, when we hover on it, you understand, it's still green. So these are examples of we can also make, there's quite a number of things we can do. We can do visited. If a link Sorry, active. If a link is active, that means if you are currently on this page, just highlight this to light green. So I think this visitor will surpass the active. Let's comment this active out. Why is this page not okay? So we are currently on home. I don't know why this active is not picking up. Alright, so okay. So there's a rule actually guiding this over, and that rule is what I need us to really grasp. I'm gonna type it out here. I just checked online and I saw that apart from knowing how these things work, CSS, like I mentioned, CSS is a rule, so you have to follow the rule. And the rule for these pseudo classes that has to do with link is that one, a hover effect must come after a link effect, and we didn't do a link effect. So let's return back our visited, let's return back our active, but the order to which they are supposed to come is a link is what it means is that an anchor tag can actually not be a link. You can use it to define a button just like I'm gonna do here. I want this to be a button. So so or you can actually use this. You can make a link look like a button like this. Well, that's by the way. So if a nav, if navigation is a link, if it's a link, then that means we want to remove the underline. Let this comment. This is supposed to be up. So if it's a link, let's give it let's remove the color tag so that it will inherit the color we gave it, the white color initially. But if it's a link, we want it to have an underline. Then once we hover it, we want a light green and we want to remove the underline. And then remember, this must come before a hover. A hover must come right immediately after the link, and then the visited. This is the order. Then active must come after the hover. The reason why active must come after the hover so that it can take effect. That's according to the rule of W3 schools. So I actually recommend you go to W3 schools so you can learn more. Now, We have let me do a so our link by default has an underline, but we want the ones that are linked to have an underline. So assuming we have another link tag here, because it's not a link, so because this text is not a link, it won't have this style that we define here, text decoration none. Do you understand? We say that every link tag should not, every anchor tag should not have a text decoration, but the anchor tag that has link should have underline. So because this one doesn't have link, that the text doesn't have link, that's why it's not underlined. I believe that makes sense. So when we now talk about hover, when we hover, we remove the underline, we take the color. Now when a page is currently active, we want to give it the same color. So let's move this active up. Now remove this visited for the meantime so that we can index.html, and this is index.html. So this is supposed to be active, but let's define the color, the style for an active. Okay, we want the color to be this without an underline. It's supposed to be here. I don't know why it's not taking effect. But anyways, we can figure that out later. Okay, so the next stop on our list is pseudo elements. We've understood what pseudo classes are. Understood what pseudo classes are here. And then let's talk about pseudo elements. Now pseudo elements also has the same similar syntax with pseudo classes. The only difference is that pseudo classes use one column, while pseudo elements use two columns. Right. So the same way we have something like this here. Let me copy this out. Then we will have something like this. So this is out. So pseudo element, the difference between pseudo element and pseudo class in syntax declaration is the double column for pseudo element or the single column for pseudo class. Now let's do an example. And there's something else I also want to point out to us. Pseudo element is basically used to style a part of an element. We can start to style maybe the first letter of this mental health, the last letter, or just a part of an element though. That's what it helps us to do. And I'm going to be showing you one important ways to use it. Right, so let's get down to it. let's decide in this our header, since we are still in the header, we have a H1. This is our mental health. It's H1. So let's do H1. Let's do header H1. And then let's do, actually, we want to apply pseudo element. We have first line, first letter. And let's give the first letter color white. As you can see, that's changed to white. That's the power of pseudo elements. You can even decide to change the font size. So we decided to change the font style of this our M. You can even do um, font family times new serif. Let's say area. As you can see, it has changed. There's quite a number of fonts you can do here. So this is basically that for. We also have first line. That's if you have an item, you have multiple line, a text that are multiple line. You can just a paragraph tag that has plenty text and it span across multiple line. You can use this to style the first line only. Okay, let's use this mental health. What is mental health? To give example. Now it is section 1, the paragraph tag. So let's select the section 1 paragraph tag inside section 1. I want the first line to have a color, a background color of purple. Okay, I use first letter instead of first line. And then let's change, since the color is now dark, let's make it white. Okay, we have quite a number of P tag here. So it's selecting everything. But I just want to tie it to the first one, the first child. So let me use this section 1 H2. I use our targeting selector, just select just the line that is immediately after this H2 so that you don't go across every other pages, right? So that is still our pseudo element. In a pseudo element, we have, I define all these definitions here. Pseudo elements select and style a part of an element. Actually, now these are quite examples of pseudo elements that you can try. We have focus, we have visited, we have link, we have disabled, we have enabled, we have empty, we have target. Now for pseudo elements, we have a number, we have first line, we have selection, When something is selected, we have placeholder. You understand? You can start a placeholder. This element targets the placeholder text of an input marker. This pseudo element targets the marker box of a list item. What it means, the marker box is this um, stuff here, these bullet points here. And then the important one I want you to pay attention to is this before and after. And that is what we're going to do before we wrap up pseudo elements. But important thing to note about pseudo elements is that pseudo elements can only be used hide these properties below. So you can only use pseudo elements to type font property, color property, background property, margin property, padding, border, text decoration, vertical alignment, text transform, line height, float, and the likes. So you can't necessarily, apart from all these properties here, you can't use it for any other thing. So that's one thing you should take note of. So let's do this. Um, let's do before and after. If you recall, you might have come across a part in a website where they will ask you that something is required. We put a div here and said, let's put something, say name is. You just almost around an input your name, and then an input box will be here. Now I'm gonna do something so that this thing will be on the same line. Let's call this input test. If we go down, you will see this thing I defined here, input test. Now I want to show you something what before and after pseudo element can do. Right, so let's go pseudo after pseudo element. Okay, let's go to our style. Let's catch this style. Input test. And then remember what we are looking at is the studio element because it's an element. Hold on. Okay. What we're targeting is the label, not really um not necessarily the element itself, which is the div called input test. Now, the after pseudo selector is used to put a content, a text, or anything immediately after the element you are targeting. Now, what that means is that in this our input box, we want to put something in front of this label just immediately. This break is just to make it come to the same, to make this input box come on the line, because if you don't, all of them will be on the same line. So, and it won't be perfect for what I want to explain. Right, so let me even add another break here so everything can be okay. Let me give it like that. So all the times you see an input forms that they will put some red asterisk here showing you that this box is required, your name is required. So what you use to achieve that when building a website is the pseudo element selector called after. So if we use this after has its own structure. There's what we call content. The content part of this pseudo element is where we define, assuming we want an image to come just immediately after this label, we can, but or even a letter, you can say you, and even give it a color. of red, right? As you can see, you have appeared in front of that with a color red. But that's not what we want. We just want to put asterisk. Now you can see that let's even give it a padding left so that and give space in between the name. It gives the left side padding of 10 pixels. As you can see, there's a space now. But let's give it just 3 pixels. Now as you can see now we have this required. The same thing goes for before pseudo selector, pseudo elements. Let's just copy what we have here and then paste it down here. But this time around we're using the before pseudo selector. What that means is that we want to put this something before the element we are targeting, right? This will come in handy in some certain edge cases of front-end design. So take note, that's why I had to explain it this way. Let's go over to what next do we have in line. We've talked about pseudo element selectors. We've talked about attribute selector, right? So that's basically it. That's basically all we have today for our selectors. So it's very, very important. Up next, we're going to be talking about some basic CSS typographic styling, which basically we've talked about here. I'm going to be doing a little bit more of emphasis so that we will understand better. So we've basically touched about all the basic selectors we have in CSS. Now we're just going to be diving. If you remember in our very first, when we started, we talked about the things we're going to learn, which is typography. So I'm going to basically use, before then, I just want to style this our header properly. So we have a header, we have nav, and inside our navigation we have UL on ordered list. So I want this our UL um, list style. Okay, let me use this. Okay. We have um, so I want to remove this no the bullet point, and I want to float left, right. So um, this navigation part, I want to give it a padding 10 pixels, and I want to give it a margin. I have top 20 pixels, top and bottom, let's call it 25 pixels, and then sideways 10 pixels. Now this shortcut syntax I did is just a short way of saying margin top 25 pixels, margin bottom 25 pixels, margin right 25 pixels, margin bottom, margin left, sorry, okay, we have 10 pixels top and bottom, so right is supposed to be 10 pixels. So these four styling we wrote here is the same thing here, is the same thing here. And the reason why it still remains the same is just because CSS takes precedence of the last styling. So if you declare the same style, it will pick the last style and apply it. So this is just a short form. This is a short form of writing this thing. You understand? So what this means is the first 25, if you have only two values and you wrote only margin, what is the first value will represent the top and bottom, while the second value will represent the left and right. Okay, so we want to, the same goes to padding as well. The same thing I illustrated here goes to padding. But there's another more fun shorthand syntax we can make use of, and that is, let's do that with padding. As you can see, we have padding 10 pixels. What this means is 10 pixels on the right, left, top, and bottom. That's what it means. Now let's see if we can define it in another short form instead of one. When you define one value for padding or margin, it means across all the four sizes, the top, bottom, left, and right, it's going to apply this margin to all. But here, let's say we want to define them individually. We can say top 10 pixels, bottom 10 pixels, left 10 pixels, and right 10 pixels. So it's top, bottom, left, and right. Top, bottom, left, and right. So just the same way we have this one represent top and bottom, the second one left and right, the same way it is. So we can increase this one to 20, the top to 20, the bottom to 20 as well, and leave this to be left and right. So that's how it is. But I don't want it to be that way. This is just same thing with what we have here. So take note. It can also be represented as this adding top. Just the same way we define. Let me just define it for reference sake. Adding top 10 pixels. Adding top 10 pixels. Adding right 10 pixels. Adding left 10 pixels. And then okay, top. We didn't add bottom. Adding bottom 10 pixels. So this is basically the same thing as the first one liner, right? So take note, please. It's very important. I'm going to be talking about some structured stuff here. But we have adding, mind you, in this second styling here, we are targeting the entire div, entire nav, but on the other hand, let me comment this out. It doesn't look neat to me. I prefer this. Now, uh, let's add padding left and pixels. Right, so as you can see, this our form is taking shape. So look at it, it's taking shape, like very, very, very good shape. So, and then the way we structured it, let me look at the way we structured it. Okay, So let me put this in a div. I have my reasons to put it in a div so I can group them. Every other thing coming outside here is a different container on its own, which we can as well group in a div. Basically, it's called call to action button. Let's remove this. We don't need it. We only need it for example sake. We can give it a class of CTA, call to action. That's what it means. And then here we can call this our class nav or navigation. Let's call this navigation. So if we come to our style, okay, so we've done this. Um, the next thing we're going to do is use header dot navigation to catch the first div, and then we'll do a float left. I'm teaching you the traditional way websites was built back in the days, right? Oh, you're not seeing our stuff again. Our please don't disappear. All right, so um, let's make it float left. We have margin auto. We have padding. Two pictures. Okay. Remember we gave this enormous height, so let's just leave this as 10 pictures. See what we have. Something styling we gave here which doesn't fit. So if we remove it and come here, you see. So instead of this, let's give it a height of 250. Okay, let me use 20 viewport height. Let's do 40. Alright. So we floated this to the left. It's supposed to be on the same page. What's going on? Oh, okay. I'm targeting the wrong styling. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Inside this our navigation, I'm supposed to target the inside this our navigation class. I'm supposed to target this, not necessarily. The previous style was actually floating the entire div, floating between these two div, navigation and CTA, which is not what I wanted. So um, okay, that's fine. So we've done this now. Let me move this out first. Okay, so let me float this to the right. And then I'm going to leave this way. because basically I'm still going to change this styling, but I don't want to go into it until we enter into advanced CSS where we talk about layouting and all that. So we'll discuss about flexbox and flex and grid, CSS grid. So I don't want to use that here, but basically what I'm going to do is, you know what? Let me return this back to what it was before. Return it back to what it was before. Same here. Let's return it back to what it was before. Okay. So we have this. We have our mental health website. I don't want this. Okay. Let's imagine top and bottom is just 5 pages, and left and right is 10 pages. So inside our navigation, I want to remove this text. We don't need it. And then I want to push our nav. Let's use this top bottom. So basically what I wanted to do is to push these buttons down. Right? Well, let me just add these buttons to a div so that they can be together because they are actually together. So we'll have this. So let's just leave it this way. There's no point floating this our page. You can only add padding. Add padding 10 pixels. Now I want to remove the underline. Reason why it's not taking effect. It's because of all the styling we had here. Okay. So if we targeted the first one, where are we? Right. Okay, so now we've done this. I don't know where I am again. What's going on? Okay, so here we've done this, and then we want to like it's margin. I'm supposed to give this. It's margin 10 pixels. Then I'm gonna give it a background color of light purple. I hope this is a color now. Let's give it a let's give it this color. Right, and then let's do border. 1 pixel, border width 1 pixel, border style solid, and then let's give it as we've given it a let's give it a width of 20 pixels. Let's do 100 pixels. Let's do 70 just to get the perfect fix. Okay, right. So I think this is okay. And then let's do some inner padding of 4 pixels. Right. So since we've got inner padding of 4 pixels, let's give a border radius of 7 pixels. As you can see, and then let's make um now let's do a hover on this so that we can change the color. Let's do a hover. I'm gonna change this background color to so as you can see. So this is basically what I want. Right. Okay. We've done most of the things I needed to do. And then let's also style this button here. So let's create a general button class that we can reuse. So we don't have to be targeting elements. Let's give this button, hold on. Let me give this button we have here a class called button so that to we're styling we can be seeing the effect immediately. So let's see, uh, let's copy some of the things we have here. Okay, let's remove border. Remove border, everything has to do with border. Let's do 3 pixels. Let's give it a color of white. So as you can see, our buttons are going, and let's give it what we call cursor pointer. This cursor pointer, what it does is to make, before when it wasn't there, if you go over, it should just be as if mouse is just going over, unlike the links that it selects. So to apply that select effect, we put cursor pointer, and then as you can see, everything is in alignment. So we have our button class that we can reuse at any time. Right, so if we go here, you can see we can even come over to this our link. Instead of having that style we gave it, we can even give it a class of btn, which is button. You can see it will assume because the other one is still taking effects, right? But let's leave it that way. Just want to show you. Let's just leave it. Come to that later. So as you can see, our website is gradually taking shape. Now let's go over to what I needed to show us. I'm done styling our header. Now, typography. Which div are we going to use now for typography? Okay, let's use this first div. As you can see, we styled the first element, the first what's it called? The first line of this paragraph, which is our mental health in section 1. Now, let's look at the HTML structure. Whenever you are styling, always take a look at the structure, HTML structure, before you apply style, because to give you an idea of what the entire thing looks like. Now, I'm going to be using, instead of that part I chose, I'm going to be using this sibling that is down here to demonstrate a lot of things. We'll have first, second, we'll have third. And then let's check if our sibling is an ID. Okay, it's an ID. We'll have sibling. And then the first paragraph is first. We can say color. The color property is used to style a color. You've seen it over and over again in our style all through. Then in this color property, it's not just this. We have different color properties in CSS. We have the RGB, which is we can with this VS Code extension, we can convert this to. We have hex, color type, we have RGB, we have hex, we have HLS, and then we have text color, just like regular primary colors, Right, so we've been using red since, right? But we can actually use something better. We can use the RGB. You see, this is the HLS example. If you click again, there are different types. If I didn't even mention, I'll just mention the major ones. We have the RGB, and then we have this. We also have what we call RGBA. RGBA helps you to put opacity to texts called RGBA. This RGB means red, green, blue, which forms the primary color. The RGBA just helps us to put opacity to colors, right? So that's what it does. But you won't take effect because on this color, because you only take effect on background colors. That's when you see this thing. Okay, it actually does. I was not making mistake. But you won't value this except to use it in the background. That is when you'll be able to understand it. So, but as you can see, our red, the color we chose is faded here just because we added an alpha. It's called RGB, red, green, blue alpha. That's for the RGB here. Let me put it here. So that's it for colors. And then I want to give this color something red. Then we have fonts. When you talk about fonts in CSS, we have the font family. Font family is you use it to define whether it is the font type, just like when you're in Microsoft Word, you can choose if you want the type of font, Korea, Times New Roman, Arial, and the likes. So here you can do the same. If I choose this, you can have multiple font family. And how CSS does is that it picks the first one. That is what it's going to use. But if the first one is not available within the system you are using, it's going to check for the second one. If the second one is not available, to fall back to, these are like fallbacks, right? It's going to pick, sorry, it's going to pick the first one, the last one here, and which is monospace, and have it. It has turned this font to monospace. But assuming I don't have monospace installed in this system or in my VS Code, it's going to fall back to Korea. If Korea is not available, it's going to fall back to Korea new, right? So that's font family. Then to change the font size of a text, and grow from 0 pixels to any amount. See, when I put 0, we're not seeing anything again. So we have 13 pixels. So a lot of things. And then we have the font weight. This is where you can use to bold the text. So font weight, we have bold, right? We have bolder. This is just different shades of the thickness of the color of the font, right, rather. Now, when we most times is we use numbers to represent them without any unit attached to it. So we can do 500 bold, we can do 600 bold, we can do 700 bold, we can do even 300 bold, depending on the shade of thickness you want. So the number is way more flexible for me. I'm not limited to the text or trying to memorize which one is larger, bolder, and all that. So with just the numbers, you can get different shades of thickness of the fonts that you need. Now let's go over to um, we have the font family, font weight, font size, and then we have text align. This text align help us to shift elements. If you want, in Microsoft Word, if you want all your text to align in the center, you have a an alignment icons you can click on. Same with CSS, but this time around, if you want this text to be centered, if we choose center, as you can see, everything will just be centered. The next, where there's a line break, it comes to the next line. It starts from the center. If we choose left, which is default, it's going to start from every text start from left by default. We can as well choose right if we want. As you can see, everything started from the right. We can choose uh, top, I guess. Hold on, let me get the values. Okay, we have left, right, end, start. Start is the same thing as the start and end is the same thing as um left and right. Then we have justify. Justify is when we have want to have a block. It's not centered, it's not we also have justify in Microsoft Word. So it's just a block code, like block format. That's what justify does. Right. So then we have text decoration. We can use text decoration to give an underline to a text. We can use dashed. But most times, text decoration is for link tags. It doesn't work just like that. Then we have, let's see. text transform. This one is what I've been looking for. So literally we can transform everything on this paragraph, this first paragraph, to a capital case. So once we do that, it capitalizes it. Why is not taking effect here, but it should. Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, it did. It actually did. But here it only picks the first character, the first letters. The first letter is speaking, is taking it, is capitalizing the first letter. If you watch, if I remove it, it changes. The D changes to small letter. If I put it, it capitalizes it. Now we have text shadow. We have text shadow. We can do forgetting how this text shadow works. Uh, so let's look at text shadow. Now the text shadow takes it takes some number of properties, and we are gonna be looking at the properties. So text shadow actually adds shadow to text. That's what it does. So and the syntax is we have the uh, horizontal shadow, we have the vertical shadow, we have the blur reduce. So I'm gonna be showing us how this works and the syntax of how it looks like. So text shadow is we have first of all the horizontal shadow, let's say 2 pixels, the vertical shadow 3 pixels, and then the color we want to use for the shadow, let me use black. Right, so as you can see, we have applied text shadow. If we do 2, right, means the rate to which the text move away from each other, horizontally and vertically. So that's how it is. Let me define a h1 tag here, or h3 tag, and say Victor. Let me use Aviki codes, right? And then let's type. Let's move this. So as you can see, Aviki codes is having uh, it's looking nicer like a 3D text. I can do DDD. Okay, let me do if I remove this, let me do um and then let me do a 2 by 2. Right? Gives your text more flex. I can do red, I can do blue, I can do brown, I can do teal, You can do just orange, red. You can do basically anything you want. And then let me increase the font size of this one. Have I mentioned font size? Yes, I have 20 pixels, right? This is the font size, and then I'll choose to use CC, right, for me. So it's lighter gray, so it looks more nicer. So we have other CSS property for text. Then we have what we call text indent. Text indent is assuming this entire thing inside this our sibling stuff. Everything inside this P, we want to indent it to move inside. Then we define the percentage which we want the indentation to occur. So we can highlight our sibling element, then choose all the P tag, remove everything here, and let's do text indent. We have let's say 20%. As you can see, everything I've moved further. If I do 30%, we've further shifted everything. Let's go to the main website and take a look at what we've done. Have you seen it has moved 30% away from its origin? Let's do 10%. Sorry. As you can see, it has also indentation is used somewhere by this time cannot moment. Alright. Okay, so text indent. We have which other one that is quite important? We have quite a number of CSS texts that you can explore. I would advise you go to W3 schools so you will get the best of all this. And then we can learn some bit of margin before we end this class. How you can center a div with just your margin tag. Now, if you look at this our website, everything looks neat. Looks as if it's on center, but it's not really on the center. So first, let's start with our footer. Our footer is looking off from the entire scope of things, right? So let's go over to the beginning. Okay, let's style our footer to have or basically everything inside here. And there's another selector I didn't mention. Maybe we'll use that selector to end it here. Selector, we have the all selector. This border box will help your responsiveness. We'll talk more on it in our class on responsive design. Sorry. Box sizing, sorry. I made a mistake. Box sizing, border box. And then we do we give our entire page a margin of, let's say, 0 top and bottom. Then as you can see, everything looks as if it's off again. This is border box. But just know that whatever style you apply or applies to every single thing on your page, assuming I decide to choose color red, let me see background color red. See everything here has changed to red. The all selector helps you to do that, but we don't need this. So let me go to body, go to the body tag. I'm going to do a margin top 0. So this will make all our content align to the center. Okay, let me also, first of all, let's give it a width of 70%. So we're giving it a 70% width, or let me do 80. To do 80. So long as your margin is defined like this, your whatever div or element you're trying to style will definitely appear on the center. The reason being that here, what you're trying to do here is trying to tell the body tag, please, the total width I want this page to have is 80% of whatever size it is. So if it is 1000 pixels, we have 80% of 1000 pixels. That's what we want the width to be. And then our margin, we want our margin, the top to be 0, the bottom to be 0, but the width left and right, the margin on the left and right, we want it to be auto, therefore just automatically equalize it for us so that the same width we have on the left will be the same width on the right, thereby making the content on the center. Alright, so um, that's it guys on this. Try and explore other CSS styling and see how you can understand them and make good use of them. That will be all for now. See you in the next video. Bye.